Our Monday Kundalini meditation today. This is a chant called Jai Jagadambe. In Sanskrit, it's something about those Sanskrit mantras that awaken the Kundalini energy in us. Jayambe, Hey Jagadambe, Mata Bhavani, Jayambe, Jayambe, Hey Jagadambe, Mata Bhavani, Jayambe, Mata Bhavani, Jayambe. Jayambe, Hey Jagadambe, Mata Bhavani, Jayambe, Jai Jai Jagadambe, Mata Bhavani, Jai Jai Jagadambe, Mata Bhavani. Jayambe, Hey Jagadambe, Mata Bhavani, Jayambe, Mata Bhavani, Jayambe. So a few mantras for the Divine Mother. Shri Ma Kundalini. What is this wondrous force of nature? Well, essentially you are the Kundalini Shakti, and there is an aspect of the Kundalini Shakti that creates the universe, so the macro, and then there's the micro version that basically incarnates as you and creates this, call it a involutionary path. And what the Kundalini ultimately wants to do is rejoin forces with, call it the highest principle. So we are enacting this journey in our body. Shri Ma Kundalini rises up the spine. It's a wondrous force. Some of these yogis say that if you do not have an awakened Kundalini, your spiritual progress won't happen very fast, because it's absolutely critical that this energy be aligned with your consciousness, essentially because it is your consciousness, and according to the way it's understood, it's kind of like a flowering fractal of infinite possibility. So let's just take a minute and just check in. Where are you at in this moment? We can talk about these wondrous concepts, but you might be feeling horrible or not feeling good. Oh. So let's abide inside. Breathe, come to peace, bring yourself to alignment. Just allow the universe to flow through you effortlessly. The idea is that this amazing force knows what it's doing, so you don't have to do maybe all the things you have to think you have to do. All right, this is a grace bestowing flow. It comes when our karmas are balanced, evidently. And another way to understand that is when the pressure grid in your body, when the atomic table in your body is in balance, then we have just the right hydrogen flow. We have just the right enactment of all the glands. And all these glands have tremendous power that takes this energy, glandular force, and compresses it, drives it with symmetry waves. When things are in symmetrical alignment, there's more power. And just take a look at your body. It's an act of symmetry, right? It's a beautifully coordinated event of various forces, nuclear forces. And the Kundalini power is a fire principle, ultimately, but let's understand it as a blue fire today. There's fires going up and on in Northern California. We don't want to overexcite the fire element here in California today. So we're going to go with the blue, with the cooling fire, with the ultraviolet fire, just tuning into that cooling fire. So this would be accenting the lunar side of the Kundalini, right? We have the Ida, Pingala nadis, so the solar and lunar drivers. These are evolutionary drivers. And so essentially when we want to cool down, we want to breathe in through the left nostril, exhale through the right. Try that a few times. Maybe one more. So this lunar pathway, this Ida, Pingala alignment, these two nadis that coalesce with the Sushumna channel, within which we have various other nadis. Nadis are sort of energy rivers in the body that don't really have exactly a physical correlate, but they kind of do if we think glandular activity. So your cerebral spinal fluid, in a sense, is the conduit. Your right side vagus nerve, is understood as powering the Kundalini as well, which connects to the right brain. The yogic scriptures, different texts suggest that this energy rises up to your throat, and then it splits. One goes to the left ear, one channel goes up to your 1,000-petaled lotus, up to the pericarp of, call it the deity that lives there, right? The supreme principle in your 1,000-petaled lotus, which understood vibrationally is essentially like 968 little frequency alignments there. We're just kind of tuning into this wonder that is the body. If you're just joining us, we're invoking Kundalini Shakti energy. I would suggest that most of us already have awakened Kundalini. There's so many masters out there bestowing Kundalini and advocating for it and teaching it. And there's literally thousands and thousands of people practice Kundalini yoga of various sorts. There's a Swami Ram Vishnu Tirth, was his name, and he wrote a book called Devatma Shakti. And this is one of the more modern texts that really goes into interesting detail about what exactly is going on in the science of the glands and the pranas. So here's the quick version. In these Ayurvedic or in these Indian scriptural understandings, we have 5 vital airs, 5 pranas. And so we'll just notice the first 2. We breathe in, we breathe out. Prana, apana, right? These 2 forces. This will clear your sinuses, yes. Maxillary sinuses, ethmoid sinuses, frontal sinuses. All kinds of sinuses are on there. They're just bringing more oxygen in. And oxygen is 4/5 nitrogen, 1/5 oxygen. And then sort of infiltrating the oxygen, nitrogen assembly is prana shakti. Now, some people say, well, oxygen is prana. Well, not exactly, because you could have an oxygen bottle sit for a long period of time and the prana will go out of it, right? So they're not exactly the same, but one is the conduit for the other. So we breathe in the oxygen, in comes the prana shakti, we exhale. And then there's Vyana prana. Vyana prana takes the life force and circulates it through blood vessels, glands and organs, sort of like the weather, right? It's sort of the circulatory energy in the atmosphere. There's kind of a macro coordinate. And then there's samana prana. Samana prana is essentially what is driving your assimilation in your intestines and elimination. So samana prana, very vital. It's concentrated in the ileum of the lower intestine, of lower small intestine. And then there's the fifth prana, right? This is udana prana. And udana prana is understood as this ascending force, right? It's literally the Kundalini is coming up the spine. And let's just notice, what's your udana prana doing, if at all? Just notice what's happening in your body electromagnetically, energetically, bioplasmically, electronically, electrically, all kinds of forces are moving. Let's breathe and just abide inside for a minute. Here we go. Just noticing what's going on. If there's pain in your body, you probably need more hydrogen. Maybe take a sip of water. Breathe deeper. Bring the hydrogen down in. That expands your field. And then just notice, is this udana prana circulating up your spine? You might feel all kinds of interesting sensations. When we invoke the Kundalini, she loves it. It's like love, right? Kundalini loves love, loves to be loved, is love, dances to joy, expands with joy. And so we breathe and essentially amplify, energize this Kundalini fire with the oxygen, with the bellows breath. You might experience Kundalini in all kinds of different ways. If we're getting into the more mystical situations, you might hear interesting music going on in your meditation. You might travel and suddenly be privy to someone else's, what's going on in their mind. Supernatural powers seem to abide in this kind of milieu. Right? There's this energy is beyond comprehension, amazing. And just aligning with it, tuning into it, breathing with it, being aware that it fills you, it circulates through you, even if you don't notice it. It's very subtle. Usually the more aligned with it you are, in certain ways, the less you notice it. If it's trying to bust through blocks in your body that are stuck, then you're going to feel it, right? It's like, oh, it's piercing things, it's penetrating, it's activating. And so we breathe and we assist. If you're a guy, you could think of Kundalini as your wife, as your lover, as your power, right? Your Shakti. Same if you're female. It's maybe more male idea of it, but it's really understood as a feminine power. Because it dances, it circulates. In India, the male power is understood as sort of more rigid. It's like, kind of like Shiva, sort of this, not there even, right? It's sort of so beyond the beyond that, who is this guy, right? So the Kundalini is sort of moving towards this transcendental entity, kind of like a fractal attractor in the future that's pulling us into the future. Right? Is the Kundalini driving us, or are we being pulled? I think you can feel it both ways. We're just tuning into our evolutionary energetics. What is driving your glands? What is driving your consciousness? This beautiful field effect. You could say the Kundalini is also your mind and your brain and your body. It's like we're all a manifestation of the Supreme Power that seems to know what to do, how to do it at exactly the right time, because it's all connected. It is the quantum field. It is this divine field. Just experience this field. We have tremendous bioplasma that emanates out of the body. It can take the shape of anything we align it with. If you saw the movie Thrive 2 recently, or Thrive 1 for that matter, a lot of that movie is about the unified fields and how we are essentially the unified field, incarnate. That's kind of what this vortexing, rotating, toroidal amazingness that we are is Kundalini. And we are beyond comprehension. Just feel this, it's like explosive love that just coming out of us. You might feel it as a warmth moving through your body. We're very voice activated, so when we speak about the Kundalini, she rises up. She's like, what? Hello. It's me. We just send her more love. Just feel this amazing expansion force. Just cuts right into the contractions in the body, contractions in the field, contractions in the mind. Resolves and dissolves the karmas holding them in place. Busts through the knots. And what's so wondrous is we don't have to do that much. As a matter of fact, when you're onto this, the less you do, the better. Get out of the way of this amazing movement force. And so we're just kind of bask in the glow. And things start to flow. There's today's new phrase. Right? Bask in the glow, and you'll feel the flow. Let it grow. Let it expand. Don't forget to breathe. Stillness brings us to this very special place. some of these ancient texts that describes that the Kundalini is linked into your second chakra. Well, that's very interesting, because if you read Joseph Sconia writing about what happens in the lower chakras, in the noble gases of krypton distills into xenon, we get this link to the plasma body, the bioplasmic sheath, the astral body. So the scientific examination of it seems to support this scriptural description of this awakening. It makes sense that we would be linked to the sort of prana body, this astral body made sort of kind of prana down lower in the body, because it needs to anchor into the earth of us. And so if it's sort of aligned too high up, it's like too, might float away. This gives us some ground. So we're anchored in the body. Now these same scriptures talk about the first chakra as earth, and it moves up into the heart as air. Well, that's their version. I've seen so many versions of this, but I prefer that the Kundalini is understood as not as earth, it's red, it's fire, right? It's the red power at the base. And so where is the base of the red power on earth? It's at the center of the earth. So I think that's the right alignment. Our spine anchored in the center of the earth, and then it gets orange, yellow. By the time you get to the surface, you're green. So it's like your body's planted in the earth from this chakra point of view. And then the blue sky, the cascading of the ultraviolet. So blue is cooling. We're just going to bask in the blue. And then that can inform your visual field. Consciousness is blue. Krishna is blue. The blue pearl is blue. That concentrated bindu in the center of the causal body, inside the black hole. Speaking of black holes, if you watch Thrive 2, Nassim Haramein has written extensively about how protons are mini black holes. And nobody has been able to refute this. Just fascinating stuff, right? It means we're just made out of gazillions and gazillions of mini black holes. And that would kind of explain how God does it, right? Every little atom, every little part of an atom essentially is a portal into infinite time-space, into the quantum field. So it's, in a sense, it's infinity all participating with infinity and having a good old time. And yet there's this sort of apparent finiteness called us. And Nassim would place us in the middle of this biological spectrum and say that everything that expands infinitely in both directions, we occupy this midpoint. And that's what's so fantastic about us, right? This biological universe is the most balanced center of it all. And this is, in the shamanism I've studied, they're always stacking worlds below and above. And this sort of pattern of earth world, hellish, and celestial, of which the ones underground are not always so bad. They're just different. They're just denser. They have different qualities. They're occupied by different kinds of beings. So we're in a world full of beings. Our body is full of a gazillion microorganisms. And if it's true that every proton's a black hole, and then, so that is pretty mind-blowing. Let's just park with that for a minute. You're made out of gazillions of mini black holes. Wow. Suffice it to say, that suggests that we have less to do with it than we think. Right? It's already doing itself. And so, what about us? Well, we have will, even if it's an illusion maybe. but I guess the idea would be that you can do whatever you want, whether God's doing it or not. So that's cool, right? You have the illusion of free will, if in fact it's all being done by the Kundalini. It's quite a show. One of last week's aphorisms we came up with was, be the viewer, not the doer. When I say we, me and my invisible friends. These guys that talk to us when we're listening. So they drop in wondrous little downloads. Someone was asking me by text the other day, he said, you know, he's been experiencing amazing Kundalini awakening. And he was saying, Sudama, when you were going through your earlier awakening, you know, back in the 70s, what's going on now? What's the difference? Like, is it still the same bolts of cosmic zapping going on in the body? My experience is, I experience it as downloads. If you just sit quietly, you just get information. It just follows you around and depends on what state you're in. And so if you're poising for meditation, if you're always on the verge of meditation, these little message units can just, they're just gonna drop in like cinnamon, right? Sort of sprinkle in, and you're like, wow. And you're guided. Suddenly you have to open up a book and there's just what you need to read, or you have to go for a walk and then you run into this important person that changes your life, or whatever. So, listening in, tuning into this intelligence that governs us, think of it as body intelligence. Body is smarter than our conscious mind. Relaxing brain. Relaxing eyeballs and jaw. Let the boundaries melt away. Downloads are coming in right now. I can feel them. The download I just got was, it was suggesting that if you're in a contracted state, that's like the world right now, full of fear and boundaries and borders, and you can't come in, and you know, blah, blah, blah. But notice when we meditate like this and boundaries sort of melt away, and what's the difference between you and me, and all kinds of consciousnesses in between everything, that would suggest that the future of the world is closer to that, right? Because if that's our evolutionary expansion, then John Lennon was right, right? Imagine that. So this is, I would suggest, our gift to the world, because when you meditate and allow the downloads, you're going to be providing a nutrient back to everything and everyone, right? It's like a distillation. It's like the process occurs within you, and then you offer back something beautiful as a result of that experience you just had of the Kundalini moving. So by moving in you, she's moving everywhere. Anyway, so that was the download I just got. Maybe notice, what are you getting about your life? So let's just sit, and if it's helpful to ask the question, the more focused you are, the more, it's like Google, right? The more specific your question, the more specific the response. So this is an interactive universe in that regard, right? So if you ask the great God Google some question, you're going to get a pretty instant answer, maybe a lot of answers. So let's just do that. So pick a question you need an answer to. Just put it forth. See what the universe has to say about that. If you have a pen and paper and you want to write something down for yourself, whatever it takes to capture it, keep it, remember it. Because these downloads don't always come back. You get some great information and later like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. I didn't work with it. My friend Pico Ayers, just aside from being an incredible Time magazine world global writer, travel writer, he teaches people how to write. And one of the things he says is, you have to be ready with your pen wherever you are. He describes like a cab ride to the airport in Bombay, and he has this incredible download. And so he writes it down on some little receipts that he has in his wallet, and he's captured it. So you never know when you're going to get magical information. So let's just go fishing again here. There's a person who's obstructing or blocking, imagine yourself thanking that person or talking lovingly to that person, correcting that person, whatever is needed to resolve the issue. Do it telepathically, and that's how profound the Kundalini is. That is an actual transaction occurring while you're just leaning into it at a distance, without words. Matter of fact, it's better because you don't have the trigger reactions and you just resolve it. Just go right into it and resolve it, whatever that issue is. I mean, on a funnier note, I can't tell you how many times clients call me up and they can't release. And it's like, for 2 weeks, And then we just zap a little Kundalini and, well, then the story all resolves. So you never know. Body's holding on to stuff. Could be toxins in your brain, toxins in your colon, toxins in your heart. Bad feelings are sucked in by negative electric pressure. It's almost like when you're off, meaning your body's going, oh, everything that's off comes running to be off with you. So that negative electric pressure needs to be balanced, right? We want positive, negative, balanced against the water pressure in the body. This perfect pH, percentage of the hydrogen, as we talked about last time. If you cascade too far into this acid-based, more dense, more particles per cubic inch, that's painful, that's contracted. Oh, you don't want that. Oh, you want to breathe into that, oxygenate that, lighten that. We think when we breathe oxygen, and we're breathing just oxygen, but like I said, it's 4/5 of it is nitrogen. And nitrogen, curiously, has an expanding quality to it, like a gas, right? So nitrogen creates space, even though as you get into denser and denser atomic elements, they're actually compressing the space. So nitrogen is your friend. Okay, so we're just going to feel this beautiful balance of all the atomic elements. The Kundalini loves it when everything is balanced. That is her goal. Balance that in you. Just listen and feel that occurring as we meditate. Your sinuses are congested, we're suggesting to your body to open them up. Healing is very much of an intention-driven modality, right? You intend a strong force. Somebody has something wrong, you intend it to be gone, and it's pretty amazing what can happen. Mind over matter ultimately rules. As more hydrogen kind of drips down, cascades hydrogen ions from your hypothalamus. Glands are amazing. And here's the deal with the glands. If we study, Joseph Skonia in particular writes about how cosmic waves are coming in, right? All sorts of waveforms, very large waveforms pass through our body. And it's sort of like a giant meal you can't eat. You need a spoon. And so what do the glands do? They take these huge transverse waves, scalar waves, longitudinal waves, every kind of wave out there. It runs it through the compressor, and it literally, we spoke about it a few weeks ago as speed of light slowing down to the speed of thought. That's one way to think of it. I think it's a 200 mile an hour thing. Your thoughts are 200 miles an hour. So that's one version. But then thinking is not what's actually running your body. What's running your body is the glands taking these waveforms and making them into bite size. And then they distribute that down into the lower glands, which then, glands are hard workers. The smaller they are, the more powerful. And then they send these messages to the organs who are, oh boy, can't take it easy. They're not working quite as hard. But they need the glands to mediate this transaction with the universe. So that's what's going on with the glands. They're really your best friends in this regard. And so we would have to say that Kundalini is a gland-driven phenomenon. And so let's thank our glands. Why not? I'll just mention a few. Hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the nuclear power plant in your brain. I think I've mentioned it, those of you who've been watching for a while, that the Chinese do not consider your brain an organ. And then you ask them about that, and they well, it's lots of glands, you know. And so these glands, in a sense, are more powerful than an organ. We think, oh, the brain is not an organ. Ha 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 ha. The brain is sort of like that supercomputer behind your computer. You don't know it's watching you. So this master control center, hypothalamic cortex, all these nuclei that do all these autonomic things. So let's just check in with that. What is your hypothalamus doing? Well, it's working with the water pressure. It's working with your heart rate, blood pressure, temperature settings, electrolytes, fight, flight, hunger, thirst, and then lots of sub-constellated dynamics. So we're just going to park for a minute and thank your hypothalamus in the center of your brain. This is the dude. And then there's a stalk that goes down your pituitary, and then it's almost like the little guy is the one in charge. It's like the hypothalamus is sort of the big guy, but then it's like Asterix and Obelix, right? Asterix kind of the mover and the shaker guy. So pituitary, it's kind of running the show, human growth hormone, and then everything to do with sodium and pressure and water balancing. So we're thanking those two glands. And then we drop down into thyroid. And each of these glands works with different pressure levels, different atomic elements. They are just amazing. So we're thanking our thyroid. And even if you don't have your thyroid anymore, Lynn, or whoever is out there doesn't have a thyroid, I would suggest that in this phantom limb phenomenon universe, you still have one. If you have an organ removed, gland removed, the subtle energy system was not removed, because the subtle energy system is not the dense physical thing, right? So they could take that out, and it's, you take your body away, you're still there kind of thing. So we breathe, we're just aligning with these glands. We get down to thymus. Thymus is a great gland to tap. It used to be much bolder and stronger, and I've seen yogis with literally fat thymuses that literally they bulge out. These are healthy people, right? So what is it? When you do this, it stimulates the thymus. And in the Western systems, these glands are associated with immune response and connecting to your spleen, bone marrow, Ayurvedic systems. All that magic's in the blood. And there's lots of ways to understand the immune system. But right now, we're just focusing on the glands. As we drop down, adrenal glands. Noticing your adrenal glands. If you have energy issues, you've probably got a blown out adrenal gland, and it's probably on the right side, because that's just what I'm feeling today. Whoever's watching seems to be right side. I'm just testing it. It's like right side adrenals. Okay, so there's a voltage in the adrenal glands. I've seen different figures for that. Let's go with 36 volts. I like Dr. Ewan's analogy. So you can test your voltage. You use your own kinesiology. If you're running half power, it'll show up as, only 18 volts in my right side. So you can test that, figure that out, and then one way to boost the glands is to think about beautiful things, beautiful vacations, places you want to be, things you want to do. That emboldens you, that gives you this driver power, evolutionary force. And the glands kind of jump too. So sometimes you just have to give them a little talking to, because they're sensitive little guys. And you figure, they need to be loved, essentially. So thank you, glands. So this HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals. Dr. Bruce Lipton has made a lot of people aware of this phenomenon. These three particular glands that run the show, HPA axis, it's kind of like a stress highway. So for the Kundalini to be dancing correctly, your HPA axis needs to be in good shape. Now in the subtle Kundalini systems, the nadis, these are energy rivers. We're just going to tune into this subtle energy river system now. We've been focusing on the glands and the organs and physical body. We're now into our 40, whatever it is, 6th minute after you've been meditating about 44 minutes, the blood makes a complete journey of your body. And there's something special about that I've noticed in healings, that when we reach that point, things pop in a different way. Oftentimes the phone just cuts right out, right? There's electromagnetic surge and a person gets kind of a reboot of some sort, depending on what they were invoking, what we were invoking. So let's say for tonight, for today, what are we invoking? We're loving our Kundalini. I would suggest anyone listening right now is already awakened from even before this. So we're just going to bask in the glow. If we're not focusing on the Kundalini, you're probably going to focus on something else, and then that fills our brain, and then Kundalini kind of goes, goes back into under her rock. So we're giving her attention. She likes that. So Shakti is a jealous woman, says Baba. We have to give her lots of love, lots of attention. Should be feeling lighter. I find when I focus on light, I just get lighter and lighter. Enlightenment. It's very light. It doesn't mean we don't want to have that Saturnian ground. We want it in balance. Speaking of Saturn, this mighty god of karma is on Tuesday night, curiously, the debate night is coming to stillness. It's been retrograde, it's going to be going forward. And what does that mean for us? All of this retrograde planet activity, Mercury just went into retrograde. According to the astrologers, very good time to meditate, very good time to write, very good time to do introverted practices, because that's kind of what retrograde is. It's sort of a going back over things, going inside, going deep down, uncovering the past, reviewing, making sure you got it right. And then when you get it right, you go forward again. It's like forward, back, forward, learning. So it feels like something was learned in the last 6 months. And now we're ready for that, to bring that up to the surface and roll it forward with some new experience in the culture, in your personal life. Mars is still retrograde, there's still a lot of anger, still a lot of, if you wrote anything on Facebook last week, there was something called a Mercury-Mars-Saturn capture. It would be like saying if you cross the parking lot to take a shortcut home, a couple of these guys would come out of the bushes and give you a hard time. So let's say this week these things are easing off. There's a lightness coming in as so Saturn screeches to a halt. Sometimes these planets are more potent in their stasis. So get ready, this is an intense time. And so I'm saying that not to get you upset, I'm saying that to suggests that we go inside, and then it lightens the whole deal, and then you don't have to experience that. Essentially, you transcend the planets, transcend these influences that are so strong, but they're really stronger for 3D operation. So if you go into that transcendental place, it's kind of like it just passes through you like, subatomic particles. Can't touch you. So here we are in that beautiful, spacious graciousness of peace. We're cultivating it, nurturing it. Number one word for Kundalini for me is absorption. When I experience Kundalini, it sucks me inside in some interesting way. It's like a really strong pull. And then it does something, and then it seems like it rebounds and you express, right? As some kind of, something is busted open and released. The knots undo. We become more authentic, more free, more loving. It's like that innocence, in a sense, of just being. If you let the Kundalini be the doer, the reviewer, the intender, the driver, then that means you can be Shiva, meaning you can be the space that driver operates through. And it's a lot easier to feel good when you feel more like space than when you feel compressed. Because that rhymes with distressed, depressed, oppressed, suppressed. So we need that reverse expression to come out. So you're stronger than the opposite of that. And then you're a radiating toroidal field of infinite possibility. And that's why we're sitting here meditating. To experience that. Kundalini manifests all the forms, all the mantras, all the goddesses and the gods and the pantheon of powers. So I'm just going to read these Saraswati mantras. So let these mantras kind of wash over you. Essentially, Saraswati means the goddess of Saras, the flow, the waves. Kundalini really is flow. Ya kundendu tushara hara davala, ya shubra vastra bhata, ya vina varadanda manditakara, ya shveta padmasana. Ya Brahma Chuta Shankara Prabhitivi Deve Sada Vandita Samam Patu Sarasvati Bhagavati Nishesha Jayapa. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Just feel that blessing wash through. Kundalini allows you to experience so many different feelings. There's a sociologist that took a survey of what people were feeling. It was pretty much either they feel good, bad, or pissed off. 3. There's a lot more feelings than that. And so it's like when we're into this deeper meditative oceanic world, much more subtle experiences and feelings are available, emotions, tastes, colors. I mean, there's millions of colors, millions of smells or whatever, thousands and thousands, whatever it is. And we kind of get jaded and routinized and thick and dense. And hence, we do this, right? To dedensify, release, relax, restore, rejuvenate, untangle, get more subtle. And then that's a place we can operate from. It's really powerful. Then you'll be okay with adversity, okay with uncertainty. Crazy stuff happens, you're fine, right? That's the idea, that you're so solid, so anchored that, if you feel like a duck stuck in a bottle, well, then you become the bottle. And it doesn't matter if there's a duck in there. It's like the mind travels and makes other moves. It solves your problems in more transcendental ways, right? It just does. So speaking of transcendental, there's the Kundalini, like I said at the beginning, loves Shiva. What is Shiva? Shiva is kind of like what they were talking about in Thrive 2, is this vacuum space that's infinitely full, that's just rich with power, rich with potency. So the Kundalini likes that. There's a raga in India, it's called Malkosh. It's the Shiva raga. It's pentatonic. Shivaya, Shivaya, Shivaya Namo. So meditate a little bit more. So tune into the bull bell for a minute. Oxygenating, beautiful oxygen. Just gathering everything together we've done. Good feeling. It's coming back into the heart. Dropping into the chest. Just claiming that stillness before we go back out into activities. Bring that stillness with you. Sriman Kundalini is always dancing. Breathing. And so after we sign off, you might even want to just stay meditating for a little bit. Let all this information kind of percolate. If you already know all this information, just meditate. Just let it go deeper into you. These reminders are good. I like to hear this information myself, right? It just helps the brain, helps the body, helps the mind. Namaste, everyone. Mañana, 4:32, Tuesday. Might be a little more musical than today, but we'll see what the Shakti has to say. Namaste, everyone. Namaste. I love you. Thank you.